It's the giving season. I wanted to reiterate that we are a nonprofit and we do a lot of community health work that we want to make sure is accessible. So one of that is it's free. So if you make a gift today, and whether or not it's a small gift or a big gift, everything will go towards going back into our health screening program, which we provide free cholesterol and glucose and blood pressure screenings for those who are medically underinsured. And you'll also be helping us expand our mental health services, which doubled in demand since last year. So we can use a bigger team, and it's getting a little bit swamped. So help us out. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Gabriella Zakiyah. She is an associate professor and department chair of the Department of Audiology at University of the Pacific. In her work at the university, she has implemented hands-ons, models, and technological teaching tools, including augmented reality and patient simulation to enhance traditional learning methods. Her area of scholarly expertise is speech and music processing in the central auditory nervous system.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I wanted to say that I'm just so happy to be here and happy to be sharing information with you today. I'm also just delighted to be part of the Community Health Resource Center today, to be contributing my time, and what a wonderful program it is, and brings health access to just such a broad population. Today, I am going to be talking to you about hearing with our brain. One of the things is that we sometimes think about hearing with just our ears, and I'm going to show you a bunch of information that is going to tell you about what actually happens for the whole auditory pathway with hearing and hearing with our brain. So as was mentioned in the introduction, I am the department chair of the University of the Pacific Audiology Department. We are located in San Francisco and in downtown San Francisco, and we have the University of the Pacific Hearing and Balance Center with several wonderful, excellent providers in San Francisco. Dr. Chung, who is the Director of Services, Dr. Hu, Graduate Coordinator, Dr. Lanz, Dr. Najem, Zhang, McKaig, and Lau. We are a small but mighty team of providers, and we provide services ranging from diagnostics to hearing aid fitting, and balance testing as well. I'll start by saying hearing is conveyed along what's called the auditory pathway. And I put a little graphic here of a pathway that has twists and turns, because that is really that is a good representation of what happens in our auditory pathway. There are actually 3 stages on this pathway. The first 2 stages are unconscious and automatic. But the 3rd stage is conscious and related to our ability to focus and understand, which is why hearing is so complex. So let's start with the first stage, which is the inner ear. So this is a drawing of looking at the back of someone's head. Here's their little ears on each side. And here in the center part is the brain. We're looking almost like an X-ray into this cartoon. In red on either side is the inner ears. And this is where all the magic happens, the first stage of what we call processing. So sound waves travel in the air. They're directed to the inner ear through these little funnels on the side. These are little outer ears. And then the inner ear captures the waves that have been traveling in the air. In fact, it makes an exact copy of the sound in the inner ear. And this is automatic. It needs no attention. It happens even when you're sleeping. Your inner ear is still working. Sometimes you can be woken up by noises. That's because your inner ear is capturing everything. It's just your brain is not paying any attention while you're sleeping, unless something breaks through. And the inner ear hearing quality depends on these specialized hearing cells called hair cells. They're not real hairs, but they look a little bit like a kind of a haircut, so we call them hair cells. This is an example of a hair cell here. And these hair cells transform sounds into nerve signals that the brain can decode. Here on the left is a picture of normal hair cells. In a normal system, you have these little rows of hairs, all nicely lined up, sticking straight up, happy little hair cells. When there has been some damage, these hair cells have what we call splayed and degraded tips. Looks a little like a mess, and that's what it sounds like too. And if it's severely damaged, you can have these pieces of the hair cells almost completely disappear. So you can see here the stages, and the quality of hearing depends on how well and how healthy these hair cells are. So damage to the hair cells can result in hearing loss, not surprisingly from that picture. There's a bunch of ways that we can damage our hair cells. One happens just as a function of normal aging. As we get older, our cells get worn out, and many of our types of cells get worn out, including our hair cells. And that's just a function of normal aging. You can also have damage to the little hair cells by exposure to loud sounds. Blasts or extended periods of loud sounds can tire out those hair cells prematurely and can lead to damage and even cell death. Other kind of damage can occur with inherited syndromes. Deafness is an inherited syndrome, as well as some types of hearing loss can be inherited from your parents or from your ancestors. And those syndromes can range from anything to increased vulnerability to rapid onset of hearing loss. So what does hair cell damage sound like? What happens when you damage your hair cells? I'm going to give you a few examples of what it might sound like to have some of these cells damaged. And I'm going to, now if you can hear me at a comfortable listening level, these should not be loud for you. The sounds that I'm going to play should be at a comfortable listening level as well. So let me share the screen again, but this time with sound. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you what would sound like a normal hearing, a normal healthy, listening to sounds with normal healthy hair cells.
300 to 3000 hertz contains the information for understanding this.
So that speaker said 300 to 3000 hertz contains the information for understanding this. If you had some hair cell damage as a function of normal aging, that same sentence would sound something like this.
300 to 3000 hertz contains the information for understanding this.
Now, that likely sounded a little muffled. If you didn't hear the difference between those two, I would love to give you the information to come down to the hearing center and we will test your hearing, because more than likely you have a little bit of high frequency hearing loss. But what happens is the high frequency loss due to normal aging makes sounds perceived as more muffled. So they're more difficult to understand. What about when you have some noise exposure? That's less damaging, but also it decreases the intelligibility of sound. So I'll play that for you. This is what it would sound like with noise exposure.
300 to 3000 hertz contains the information for understanding this.
So you can tell, you might be able to tell that you're missing a little bit of quality there, but you can still understand, and the speech is still intelligible to you. Depending on the extent of noise exposure, you can damage more or less hair cells. Now, that's the inner ear, but that's not the end of the story. We also have what's called the auditory nerve and the auditory brainstem. So now we're moving from, oh, let me get my little, let's see if I can get my, my spotlight. I've got a question from from an anonymous attendee that just came up, and the question is asking, what brain training exercises do you recommend? How do we re-enter post social situations post-COVID solitude and continue declining hearing? I am so glad for that question. And you know what, I could talk just on that. And actually, you know, we might want to do another one, another talk on exactly what this person is asking about. Brain training exercises, you know, one of the best brain training exercises is music. And not just listening to music on your stereo, but going and listening to live music or playing music yourself, even if you're not good at it. The reason is that music has an alternate access pathway to what we call the auditory nerve, the auditory brainstem, and the auditory cortex. So it's utilizing the same muscles as speech understanding, but in a different way. So one of the best things that we can do is engage in speech and then have some fun listening to other things like music. Regarding the re-entering the social situations post-COVID and solitude with continued declining hearing, that is such an important question. CHRCSF would like to answer this question live, it looks like. So go right ahead.
I'm sorry. I think that's just me being the admin. Because you're answering it live, I'm tagging it like that, but I do not know this answer better than you.
Okay, I see. Okay. Well, and let me come back to that afterwards, because there's a couple more slides that I wanted to show you, and we'll put this in the pocket to come back to how do we re-enter these situations with continued declining hearing. Thank you.
And feel free to wait until the end. These questions are actually coming from our registration, and I'm posting them anonymously, but they're going to be great for when you circle back.
Okay, excellent. So here we are. Let's come back to the auditory nerve and the brainstem. The inner ear sends that copy that it made to the auditory nerve. And this down here in yellow is what I'm drawing as the auditory nerve here. Okay, so that connects the inner ear to our, what's called the central nervous system, to our brain. That transmits an electrical copy of that wave signal that the inner ear made to the brainstem nerves. And this is also automatic. It's an automatic response in a transmission. So this requires no focus, no attention. It only requires that you have a healthy functioning system in order to transmit this. Now, nerve-based hearing quality depends on good nerve health, and some diseases break down nerves. So here I'm showing you a picture of a normal, healthy, I should say, auditory nerve. This is a cross section, and you see all these little tiny circles in there. Each of those are individual neurons, and they have nice boundaries. Some of them they're organized into nice sections. It looks like a little bit of a happy family on the left. And on the right, those boundaries get blurred, okay? And what that means is that the outside of the nerves have been broken down quite a bit. And many of the nerves, like if you look in here in this little area, there's none there. That means that there's less nerves total in this nerve, which is a cross-section of someone who has what's called auditory neuropathy, which is a pathology of the auditory nerve. So this is an example of a disease that can break down nerves. We also know a lot of other ones like multiple sclerosis that can break down nerves specifically. Nerve-based hearing quality depends on having good auditory nerves, healthy auditory nerves. And damage to the nerves, even if you have a perfectly wonderful inner ear, can also result in hearing loss. It's a little bit of a different type of hearing loss than what we heard before. So I'm going to play you the normal one again, the healthy hearing, and then I'll play you what it sounds like with damage to some nerves. So here we go.
300 to 3,000 hertz contains the information for understanding this.
So that's the healthy hearing. And here's something like what would be damage to the nerves.
300 to 3,000 hertz contains the information for understanding this.
So what happens is there's less nerves and less firing. Now you might have been able to pull that together because you were able to hear to put it together using what's called your cognitive function. You're able to pull out meaning from sounds even if the sounds are degraded. So how can this happen? What happens if you have repeated or long-term exposure to loud sounds? Eventually, not only the hair cells will be damaged, but the auditory nerves will get tired as well. Also, toxins. In some forms of chemotherapy, there are ototoxic medicines that are also given as well. Toxins can destroy the neural tissue. And also diseases that break down cells or parts of the cells, like multiple sclerosis or auditory neuropathy. All of these kinds of damages can result in that hearing loss, in a neural hearing loss. And now here's, I got a little ahead of myself, but that's what the auditory nerve damage sounds like. It makes it more of a variable response. And you might not hear certain parts of what is said. The last station is the auditory cortex. So here we've got the inner ear on these two little red curly cues on each side. Then we talked about the brainstem and the auditory nerve in yellow. And now I've drawn this kind of arrow up into the auditory cortex. Now here's the brain. We've got the top of the brain, and auditory information is routed into the sides right above our ears into what's called the temporal cortex. And the brainstem transmits that signal into the auditory cortex. And the cortex turns everything that's happened, all the encoding, into meaning, turns sounds into meaning. And it also categorizes voice quality. So recognizing your child's voice or your spouse's voice is a function of cortical mapping. And the cortex also puts sounds into context and memory. The reason why you can understand what I'm saying right now is because your cortex is stringing those sounds together and categorizing them into words, and then linking that to your memory of what those words mean. really important function. And this part is not automatic. If, for example, something very strange happened in the room that you're in right now, for example, your attention would be drawn away from me, and you might not hear what I have to say in the next few sentences. So the functions of how the auditory cortex hears is largely under conscious control, and it's not always automatic. So damage to the cortex can result in hearing loss as well, even if the inner ear and the auditory nerve are completely healthy. And this gets back to one of the questions that was put up. Cognitive decline and memory problems can result in some types of hearing loss. Attention deficits can result in difficulty listening. And then also some ischemic trauma with stroke or head injury and accidents that can actually damage the cortical tissue through either oxygenation loss or blood loss to the auditory cortex, or through actual physical damage. All of those can damage to the cortex that can result in hearing loss, even if your earlier stages are perfectly healthy. What does cortical hearing loss sound like? So what I'm going to show you here, what happens is that cortical hearing loss would often sound like a reduced ability to make sense of the sound. It would almost sound like, let's see here, I'm going to unmute these two things. It would almost sound like this. Oh, well, first I'll do the healthy hearing.
300 to 3,000 hertz contains the information for understanding this.
And then it would be as if it always had this.
300 to 3,000 hertz contains the information for understanding this.
So just some background noise, something distracting you out of the ordinary, or not being able to focus on two talkers. What's the good news? So now I've kind of told you the bad news. There's these 3 stages of hearing. You can lose your hearing at each stage. I don't want to be all bad news. I'll give you the good news, is that hearing restoration is possible at all stages. And this gets back to some of the questions that came in at the beginning. Audiologists help to solve problems all along the auditory pathway. This is one of our students. She graduated already, but this is an example of the type of person you would see at your audiology clinic. Amplification can help improve hearing in the first 2 stages. So amplifying sounds, in other words, making them just louder, and making the sounds louder that correspond to the damaged hair cells or nerves, can help you hear, particularly with problems in the inner ear and the auditory nerve. And audiologists can work with the medical team to recommend specialized listening exercises for cortical hearing loss, like memory, oral rehabilitation, auditory training, and conditioned behavior. So if there is some kind of cortical hearing loss, there's a variety of rehabilitation exercises and specialists that can assist with auditory memory and training and conditioned behavior in order to increase your attention. So for the summary, your audiologist can help with many kinds of hearing problems. Different hearing losses need different solutions. And hearing occurs at multiple stages along what we call the auditory pathway. I'd like to encourage you, if you wanted to learn more about this, or if you'd like to have your hearing checkup, please contact our Hearing and Balance Center. We have one in San Francisco and one in Stockton. And you can always go to our website and check us out at upacifichearing.com. And this is also, I'll just leave this up here for just a second and then take some questions.
So I put some of the, well, I guess that since you already started answering the brain training question, I thought it'd be good to go back to that one, especially the second portion where we're talking about re-entering society after shelter in place.
Okay. Right. So hearing loss can definitely negatively impact our ability to socialize. When we can't understand what people are saying, a lot of the times you might feel isolated because you can't participate in the conversation like the rest of the people who have healthier hearing do. This COVID shelter in place time has been an extended isolation. So not only are people now more hesitant to come into social situations, they're out of practice and they have hearing problems. So it's almost like it is a triple threat. What you want to, how do you re-enter social situations post-COVID solitude and continued declining hearing is going to be a personal journey for each individual. If you notice that your hearing has declined since beginning your shelter in place, you may want to explore ways to improve your hearing so that you can engage a little more effectively with people in social situations. There's also going to be the getting over the hump of and the fear of moving into those social situations. I remember when I first started coming back to work, it was scary and it was frightening for quite a while. And until I did it a few times with people I felt safe with, I was really worried. And then as I felt safer, as I stayed healthy, as I practiced safe social distancing, masking, getting my vaccinations, I was able to get over those fears. And but each person is going to have a different. So I would say practice makes perfect. Try it out with people you trust and expand your social circle. Because there is a relationship between depression and hearing loss, you may want to visit a audiologist to see if you can boost your hearing and give your brain that extra activity that'll get you back into your social situations. Let's see here. Now we've got another question is, that went away. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. At what loudness does our hearing come to us through our bodies as well as our ears? In some concert situations, the whole body vibrates. Oh, that's a great question. So, right. So that is resonance. We are resonating with the sounds. What happens is that it's not necessarily a loudness, but it's a connection to the vibration. So sometimes if you've ever stood on a train station and you felt the train in your feet before you could even hear it, that's because the vibrations are resonating through your body. It's not necessarily that it's the loudness, but it's the connection that you have to that vibration. That said, louder sounds will vibrate parts of your body more than softer sounds. So I'm not sure about the loudness level, but I think it would be somewhere around 70 to 80 dB. You would start to feel the vibrations in your body. And certainly then you're actually getting into, when you're feeling the vibrations and your whole body is vibrating, probably need some hearing protection to protect those little hair cells. Okay. What's the most discreet and economical way to enhance auditory skills for a person with ADD who is experiencing a hearing loss? What an excellent question. There are many discrete and economical ways to enhance auditory skills for a person who is experiencing hearing loss and who has ADD. My recommendation would be to come and check us out, make an appointment with us to see the audiologist, because first what we want to find out is what kind of hearing loss is happening and how we can best find that discrete and economical way. Now, hearing aids have a reputation of being very expensive, but there's a lot of new types on the market that are coming out, and your audiologist can help step you through that. Oh, Elaine Gee with types of things to restore hearing. That could also be a whole other topic. So let's see, where can I start? So there are a few procedures. Amplification is a restoration of hearing. That just goes into your ear. Hearing amplifiers go into your ear. They make the sound louder. That restores some of your hearing. Without going in, no surgery is needed. For people for whom those types of solutions do not work, there's also what's called a cochlear implant. And that is really a miracle of science, where the surgeons insert a small wire into your inner ear and stimulate your nerve electrically. And then you can hear some sounds bypassing that inner ear altogether. So if you have extreme damage to your inner ear, and sometimes in the case of congenital deafness, when someone's born without any hearing at all, their brain is working fine. You just have to access those neurons. It's a cochlear implant. And then people at many research laboratories all across the country are working on restoring hearing through a regeneration of the hair cells. And that's a very complicated problem to solve. But people have made strides in that area where but in this case, we're still in the animal models, are able to hear sounds after having hair cell damage and restored through some types of hair cell regeneration. Still in the baby stages, but I am part of Stanford Ear Institute as well, and our goal is to cure hearing loss. And I believe that can happen in the next decade. Let's see here. We have got, if someone starts to talk more softly than in the past, is that an indication? Oh, this is a good question. If someone starts to talk more softly than in the past, is that an indication that they may be experiencing hearing loss? Or is it more likely that the listener is the one losing the hearing? Right? That's a good question. It's likely that if you only experience it with this one person who's talking more softly, then it's an indication that something is going on with their hearing, or perhaps their hearing and balance system. Sometimes when the voice sounds louder, there can be some occlusion in the ear. It could be some fluid in the ear. There could be other things going on that the audiologist could help you, or potentially an ear, nose, and throat doctor could help diagnose. Definitely would be something that you would want to come to the audiologist if you perceive that you are talking more softly, or your voice is sounding louder, especially if it's in one ear over the other. If many people appear to be talking softer, it's probably the listener, and might be losing a little bit of that hearing. Let's see. Oh, are all hearing centers equal? No, they are not. It depends on the expertise of the person. So the difference between going to Costco and a dedicated clinic, the anonymous attendee is asking, are all hearing centers equal? What is the difference between going to a Costco or a dedicated clinic? So here's the thing, is that most hearing losses can be treated with the majority of your hearing losses, kind of like the majority of your vision problems, can be treated with glasses that you buy at Walgreens, right? Many people can go into a Walgreens, buy glasses off a shelf, put them on, and they see great. Some people like me who have unusual hearing, unusual vision, I have to go to an optometrist so that I can get the right kind of care for my vision problem. Costco does a good job at servicing the majority of minimal hearing loss. Once you get into the more complicated issues, and especially anything to do, obviously, with balance, they're just not going to be able to serve. And the other thing is that with a dedicated clinic, you get to have a person who knows how to treat the whole patient. You might need rehabilitative, oral rehabilitation systems, services, or have other dedicated, integrated health professionals with you. So it really depends on the person's hearing loss. If you go to Costco, you get a hearing aid, it works great for you, great. If it doesn't work, it's not necessarily that it's the hearing aid's fault. It may be that you need a little bit more individualized attention, and that's when you would benefit most from your audiologist.
I think that there's another question related to the hearing center at Costco. I wonder if we could go to that one and then answer the one above it. But
okay,
this person asked, how do I know whether Costco works for me in my hearing loss?
That's a good question. Joe, Patty,
yes, ma'am.
What do you think about Costco? How would you answer this question? How do I know whether Costco works for me in my hearing loss? I'm going to bring in another expert.
Hi.
Oh, you might have to come in a little bit.
Yeah, don't be alarmed if a person
Hello.
comes out.
I appeared out of nowhere. So what's the question?
How do I know whether Costco works for me in my hearing loss? Talking about different places to go for hearing loss, different hearing loss. And what I was saying is that for minimal hearing loss, you can almost go anywhere.
I wouldn't go to Costco anyways for any kind of hearing loss. I'm sorry to say that. Well, if they don't require medical attention, that's one. Number two, if they don't require advanced audiological evaluation or diagnostics, that's number two. If they still have a lot of the residual hearing, like their discrimination ability, and they can maintain communication, then probably they can go anywhere. But once they start having difficulty with word recognition or any other condition that requires medical attention, then that's when they need an expert to help them, because they will need not only a product, they need good fitting skills and good oral rehabilitation skills.
That's right.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Very well. I was dancing around it and you just went straight to it. That was Dr. Najem, who, let me share my screen and I will show you, let's go back to the first. There he was in the flesh. Dr. Najem, who is an assistant professor and part of our San Francisco providers.
Thank you so much for bringing him in.
Okay, so we've got, I can hear quick, no. What is this? I can hear when the volume is louder. Can my hearing loss be fixed quickly? More than likely, yes. So if you find that you turn up the volume on the TV and you hear everything perfectly, no problem. that's a good indication that it's pretty straightforward. Like what Dr. Najim said, it doesn't require, it's not a complicated issue. Oh, this is a really, really good question. How can family members discuss hearing loss with those experiencing it without offending them? Sometimes the person who doesn't hear well doesn't ask speakers to repeat or acknowledge anybody because it's too much trouble. That's exactly correct. And that's when we get into those isolation situations where people are just not going to ask, they're just not going to understand. And they feel more isolated, more distanced from all the people who are understanding what's being said. How can family members discuss hearing loss with those experiencing it without offending them? I look at it, I try to bring, I don't, when I brought it up with, I think it's a very personal, first of all, it's a very personal situation. But some things that work are like relating it to other things. Vision. You have a vision problem, you have a vision difficulty, you get some glasses, right? And you can have all kinds of neat glasses, different types that look really cool. We have really great hearing amplifiers now that look really cool, or you can't see them at all. Not like our old, sometimes people are hesitant about trying to find a solution for their hearing because they have in their mind that it's going to be this big box that's sitting on their ear that is like telling the world that they are impaired in some way. But nowadays we have hearing amplifiers that fit very discreetly in the ear. You can't even tell if someone has it. So if they are worried about the stigma, we're still fighting against the stigma that people with hearing loss are somehow less than, or that it's a sign of being, disabled. But that we're trying to change that culture. And by discussing it in terms of just anything else, any other kind of solution, any other kind of health solution, sometimes that creates an opening with someone who might have difficulty hearing.
I think that was the last question in Q&A, but we do have questions sent directly into the chat.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and read them for you, but
Okay.
you can also check them if you'd like. This is from Carol in our audience. I'm quoting her question. I'm always surprised at the advice to listen to music or make it. Music sounds horrible to me. It sounds like a baby banging on a piano, lots of notes mashed up together. There's no reverb. Violins sound plinky like banjos. And when I sing, I'm off key and I can't stand it. I can't get to where the note I want to be is. And is it worth going through that torture?
No. No, definitely not. Do not. That sounds like a terrible experience. Just like there are people who have difficulty understanding speech, or who might have some differences understanding speech, there are some people who have differences listening to music. In fact, some people don't hear pitch differences at all, and are called they're called amusics or dysphonics. Dysphonia is where these sounds don't sound good to you, just like they sound good to other people. And that doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. It's just the way that your system is. So that would not be a good way to increase your listening capacity by doing something that's negative or that feels uncomfortable. One of the ways to increase your listening acuity is to do pleasurable listening activities. Maybe for Carol, you might enjoy listening to podcasts. listening to something that is a really interesting topic for you, or listening to an audiobook, something where it engages your attention and is a pleasurable experience for you. But auditory torture, we do not recommend. No, I agree with you.
Thank you for that question, Carol. Next asker, Elaine, asks, when do we know that we should get examined by audiologists? I presently get my ears examined annually. And by ear, I mean ear, nose, and throat specialist.
That's a great question. If you start to notice that you're having trouble hearing in situations, particularly, here's where it's going to come up for you: on the phone, or in social situations where there's a lot of people talking at once, or a lot of background noise. That's usually when people start to notice that they're having problems hearing, people asking people to repeat something on a consistent basis. When that starts to happen, what you want to do is go to your audiologist and get your hearing evaluation. At our clinic, those are very economical. And even if your hearing is not at a place where you could benefit from amplification, it's good to get a baseline.
Thank you, Elaine, for that question. Next asker, Janet, is there a treatment for
Meniere's disease?
Thank you.
So Meniere's disease is a auditory vestibular disease that affects both of the vestibular, sorry, I'm just laughing at Carol's response. You're welcome. Meniere's disease affects the vestibular and the auditory system, where there's a buildup of fluid in the vestibular system that causes a sense of pressure in the ear, and then can decrease hearing. Many times then there's a release of that because there's a perforation in the vestibular system fills up with the fluid so much that it then perforates and expels the fluid. The hearing returns, and it's a cyclic problem like that. Meniere's is a very complicated problem, and people are working very hard on researching how to address that. It also can depend on your individual issues. As right now, there is not a cure, but treatment. Let's see here.
Thank you for that response. I think that more questions were sent directly into our Q&A this time.
Okay.
So the first one is by an anonymous attendee. I have word recognition issues.
Oh.
How expensive is it for me to get help so that I can hear what's being said around me? It's very frustrating and difficult to ask people to speak louder. Do you take insurance like Medicare Part B?
Yes, we do take insurance. And because it's a student clinic, we have reduced rates. Word recognition issues, that's exactly when you want to come in to see an audiologist. That's exactly when you want to come in to see one of our clinicians. How expensive is it for me to get help so that I can hear what's going on and being what's said around me? So there are a lot of different plans. And one of the new plans that we have that we're just introducing in our clinic is a loaner plan, where it's a pay-as-you-go. So it's instead of purchasing the hearing aids, the amplification system right out at the full cost, you can, it's almost like you do a leasing program, where you can lease the new hearing aid, the newest, greatest hearing aids for a certain amount per month. And then when you are ready to graduate to the next new thing, you just have them turn over. So it's kind of like a phone plan for your amplification devices, and those are very. I think they're very economical per month, much less money than paying for your devices up front.
I think there's another person in the audience who asks if there's a possible range with a dollar amount for when you mean economical.
Right. So I think that that is something that I might have to phone a friend. Joe?
Yeah, what's up?
Do you know how much the leasing program is?
I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry.
Right. I think you'd have to come in. I think you'd have to come in to see our price ranges.
If you'd like, if you have the information somewhere and you'd like to email it to me later, I can make sure that it's included in the post-event email. I want to make sure that all of the resources you mentioned in your presentation also gets sent. So I'll touch base with you afterwards.
That's perfect. I'd love to do that. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think that there is one last question, and it's about tinnitus. Is it inevitable with age?
Great. So, tinnitus. I have it. It can be very annoying. What is tinnitus? Tinnitus is a ringing in the ears, even though there's no external sound. So even when it's quiet, when there's no external sound, some people experience a ringing in the ear or a whooshing sound or a crimpling sound. And it can be very difficult because it can range from anywhere from a soft sound and not very annoying to some people experience very loud ringing and very annoying to the point that they can't sleep. Tinnitus is not inevitable with age. Tinnitus can occur. Its etiology is not precisely known, but there are two types of tinnitus. One is more of a peripheral tinnitus, where what we do know is that with amplification devices, some people have their tinnitus go away entirely. And that's if it's in the inner ear, if the problem is in the inner ear. If the problem is, like I said, in the brains, in the auditory nerve or in the cortex, amplification devices don't assist. And then what you need is the training, is that rehabilitation, is that cognitive training to reduce the annoyance of the sound. So there's a variety of different things that you can do. It's not inevitable. Not everybody gets it. But for the people who do get it, it can be very disturbing.
We have two more questions. One is by Valerie. If someone experiencing social isolation due to hearing impairment is too uncomfortable to expand social interaction, do we just send email even if they don't reply?
I feel this question, and if someone is experiencing social isolation due to hearing impairment, my recommendation would be let's try to solve the problem. Let's try to solve that. Get you to where you can hear better, increase your hearing health, and if you just send an email, even if we never get a reply, I know that if you send an email to our audiologist, you definitely will get a reply. And so I would really encourage Valerie and anyone who's listening who is experiencing that social isolation due to hearing impairment to reach out to your audiologist. We take care of people like you every day, and people change, their lives get changed every day by increasing their hearing health.
I think that's a great segue into our final question, which is a question about scheduling. And this question could also, the information is absolutely going to be included in our post-event email. Dr. Zakiyah, if you could just make sure that I have that information.
I will do. Our earliest appointment is 8:30 a.m. in the day, but I don't know when our next available is.
Um, there's also someone who wanted to ask, aside from humor, how should one respond to normal hearing people when I ask them to repeat and they laugh at me?
Yeah, I understand that because you don't know what it's like until you experience it yourself. So people who have a little bit of low empathy for someone who's asking for a repeat, gosh, I like the humor. That's definitely a great way to diffuse the situation, and humor can be a great bridge. But I would just, I think that if they laugh at you, or they think that you're joking, just say, no, I really I really want to hear what you had to say, but I just didn't catch it. Can you repeat?
Thank you very much. I think that was our last typed question. I'd like to make sure that the floor is open for anyone who'd like to unmute themselves to ask the question live. Again, if you are dialing in and you want to ask a question, dial *9. We'll know that you're interested in taking the floor, and then we'll unmute you. Then you can dial *6 and then ask your question. If you are running us through your computer, go ahead and raise your hand, and that's the icon at the very bottom of your screen. If you're shy, that's fine too. Feel free to continue chatting with us or inputting a question into the Q&A. If we don't hear a question from you, then we can also end today's presentation a little early, and I'll make sure to touch base with Dr. Zakiyah about the resources mentioned in her presentation, and also information about how to schedule at the Hearing and Balance Center at University of the Pacific. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dr. Zakiyah?
No, I just wanted to say how delighted I was to be able to come here and share some of what I know about the hearing system and to answer your questions. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
It was great having you. I see that we do have someone raising their hand, so I will go ahead and give Roger the floor.
Go ahead. What's happened when I had a hearing aid that I even can wear them, and they are not that heavy. I mean, they are not, but I'm so sensitive that I get headaches with it.
Absolutely. Did you? So sometimes when you have a hearing aid, especially when you first get first get your amplification, everything sounds much louder, and that can be often very off-putting to people. That now they hear the crinkling of the paper when they didn't hear that before, and it sounds very loud. And some sounds can sound very destructive and can it can make you so tired of hearing everything all day. The good news is that your audiologist can adjust your hearing aid. It's not like glasses. A hearing amplification is not like glasses. It would be like as if you could change your prescription with a tuning of a button. So that in different situations, such as background noise situations, you can change a program on your device so that it's not as disruptive for you, or the audiologist can actually make wholesale changes with your device that can help you, that can sometimes make it easier to hear. That said, most people usually experience a trajectory of hearing, which is that the sounds are perceived very loud and a little bit jarring at the beginning of when they start to wear their amplification devices. And then over time, they get used to the sounds and start to understand more. So that's the brain part of your hearing, is that you're retraining your brain to hear those sounds normally. You haven't had that input before, and so they sound really jarring at first. And then over time, when you use your hearing aids on a regular basis, you get used to those sounds, and your brain can make sense of them more, and to when they have repeated exposure to sounds, are able to not be as jarring as it was in the beginning. And that happens to a lot of people. So I don't know if, Rose, that you have you're new to these devices.
No, I'm not new.
Okay.
But I know a little bit when you explain that, but I also the heaviness, or they're
heavy. Are they heavy?
It wasn't heavy before, but I went to work in not too long ago, and I couldn't, it's just the physical in my ears.
I see. So you might need another brand. There's other brands that are really lightweight, that almost you can't feel them at all. They reside almost entirely in the canal.
Oh, it's in the canal. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, and that might not be, I would recommend just going to your audiologist if you have one, or bringing the devices into the Hearing Balance Center. We can take a look and see your options so that you don't get headaches from wearing that device.
Yes, yeah, that's sensibility.
I see.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misunderstood that at first, what you said. It's the weight of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that, but I have that quick question.
Okay.
When they do that test, over in Santa Rosa, and they said that my hearing 6 years ago was 20, now increases to 30. Is this a lot in 4 to 6 years?
No, that's normal.
It's normal.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's normal.
So the noises I use, I was thinking that I use the Sonicare brush.
No.
And the noise, I feeling pretty noisy. So
yeah.
My ears.
No, I don't think that the Sonicare is not probably causing any damage at all. But it's pretty normal to have a progression, that we do that gentle sloping progression. And that's when you want to check into maybe upgrade your devices, change your devices, because then or to change your programming with your audiologist, because your hearing changes. You need your device to be able to adapt. Yeah.
Is this in San Francisco?
It is. There's one in San Francisco and there's one in Stockton.
Okay. Thank you, because I'm closer to San Francisco. Okay, so we know the phone number that we can call to make an appointment. Okay.
That will be included in an email that will go to you as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Rose.
Thank you.
We have more questions coming in. I think that this discussion is getting very lively. Someone asked, I have an Eargo hearing aid and that didn't work. Do you have any suggestions?
Right. So that goes back to what Dr. Najam was saying, is that for people who need for people who need a diagnostics, you'll want to see a professional. You want to come in and take a look at the type of hearing loss, the type of loss that you have. Like what I was saying, we have hearing with the inner ear, we have hearing with the auditory nerve, and the Eargo only treats one kind. And one set of hearing problems. Now, it's really great for those who it does work. It really expands people's ability to amplify their hearing. And, we want more people to hear. But like I said, and like Dr. Najim said, it's not going to work for everyone. And that's the case where you want to come in and check out, and check in with your provider, with your audiologist, someone who can help you in a little bit more of an individualized way.
I think that response also relates next to another question here. I am almost 70 years old and I did not pass the annual hearing test ever since middle school. What do you suggest?
I suggest I see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Yeah, so I think that it's never too early to hear. It's never too late to hear. I remember when I first found out that I needed glasses, I put it off for about a year and a half until my boyfriend at the time saying, "Yeah, you'll see tomorrow." And I realized, why am I waiting to do this? Why am I waiting to do this? I didn't want to wear glasses because I thought I was going to look kind of geeky and nerdy, which is true. But now I have cool glasses. But anyway, back to you. I would say that it's even if you haven't passed the annual hearing test since middle school, that doesn't mean that you have to deprive yourself of hearing one more day. There's lots of sounds to hear, and I would suggest coming in to check. You could check out over-the-counter hearing amplifiers, see if that helps. There's the Eargo that was mentioned. If you hear better when things are at a louder level, maybe something like the Eargo is going to help and give you what you need. And if it doesn't, then you can come and see us, and we'll take care of that.
Thank you. I think this is the last question from Valerie. Okay. If you experience loud noises such as applause and they're painful, is that an indication of damage to some part of the hearing pathway?
Oh, right. So Valerie, thanks for the question. That's called recruitment. And that often is an indication of damage to some part of the hearing pathway. It can either be the inner ear or the auditory nerve. What that means is that there's less, sometimes with damage or with loss due to natural aging, there are less cells that are working, but they're working overtime. So if something gets loud very quickly, that's because there's all of the cells are being recruited at once, instead of the appropriate set of cells. So yes, it is an indication that something's going on, and that can be treated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zakiyah. There's a note here in our chat, and it's not a question, but perhaps it's a really good tip for anyone out there exploring or transitioning with their hearing aids. Carol shares that when she first started a hearing aid, it was too loud, but her audiologist turned down the volume a lot and then dialed it up a little bit every 2 to 4 weeks and for about 6 months. And that made a huge difference in helping her adapt. So I hope that resonates with someone in the audience today.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Carol. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, and there's one more question before I let you go, Dr. Zakiyah. You're just really popular. The Clear Sounds loop works well for me for phone conversations. Do you have hearing aids that will work for me?
Work with the loop? Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. I will type that answer. And I think that I will go ahead and start our closing for the day.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Zakiyah. I am really excited to have hosted you. I hope that you will consider coming back to Community Health Resource Center again and sharing more information with us, perhaps more of the topics that were asked today, but you couldn't quite delve into. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And have a wonderful evening and a great rest of your week.